Part 3. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 21. She had guessed this result long ago, but she didn't expect that the great Qin was so vulnerable. His Majesty was right, the great Qin had long been corrupt. The blue-skirted girl remembered what the empress had said to her before she left. The character of Zhang Luoshan is like her father, the king of Zhenbei, and it is impossible for her to cooperate with us. Only by making her completely disappointed and giving up on the great Qin, there will be a chance. The blue-skirted girl admired the empress very much at this time, and was full of worship. As long as Qin Mu agreed to cede the Qinling Mountains and the surrounding 80,000 miles of mountains and rivers, she would have the confidence to persuade Zhang Luoshan to attack Chang'an City with her. By then, the north border could be used as a vanguard to expand the territory for the Kangyu Empire and eventually replace the Great Qin. Thinking of this, the corners of her mouth curled up, revealing a bright smile. Qin Mu's eyes swept across the faces of everyone in the hall one by one. Finally, it fell on Du Yulin, and whispered, "National Master." Du Yulin's body trembled violently, and he suddenly raised his head and looked at Qin Mu, his eyes red. "Your Majesty, are you really going to give up the north?" Qin Mu sighed softly. "You are the pillar of the great Qin, and also my right-hand man. Now, you are the only one left to support the great Qin, and I am very relieved." Hearing Qin Mu's words, Du Yulin's turbid old tears flowed. "I am stupid and let your Majesty down." It was just Qin Mu's next sentence that made him suddenly stiff. Even the atmosphere in the hall suddenly solidified. "Come on, take these three people down, send the women to the palace as slaves, and drag all the men out and chop them off." Qin Mu sat on the throne, his eyes were cold, and he gave the order without hesitation. The faces of many ministers in the hall suddenly changed wildly. "Is your Majesty crazy? This is the princess of the Kangyu dynasty, and there are two powerful people in the realm of Zhandao. How can you deal with them so casually? Even if you don't agree with their request, you can't just kill the envoy directly. Wouldn't this be a complete break, with no room for mediation?" "Your Majesty, no." Du Yulin shouted hurriedly, his voice hoarse and heartbroken. He never thought that Qin Mu would make such a decision. The other ministers were also pale and horrified. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty, be careful with your words." Many civil and military ministers shouted in unison, trying to dissuade Qin Mu. The two old men in green and the girl in blue skirt were also stunned. No one thought that Qin Mu actually planned to slaughter them. "Emperor of the Great Qin, are you crazy?" The girl in blue skirt shouted, looking at Qin Mu with a sullen face, furious. She never thought that the Emperor of the Great Qin would dare to do this to herself. She is the princess of the Kangyu dynasty, and the other party wants to send her to the palace as a slave. This is no longer an insult, this is a naked humiliation. The two old men in green were also furious. "Qin Mu, you are looking for death. The great Qin has fallen, and you dare to be so arrogant, you simply don't know how to live or die." The two shouted loudly, and their aura bloomed, turning into a rolling storm that swept across, destroying everything around. In an instant, the entire Jinluan palace was filled with two huge auras. Rumble. The air exploded, as if thunder exploded, making people dizzy. Those ministers could not withstand the impact of the aura, and immediately spurted blood and stepped back several steps. These two are both cultivators at the peak of the way of slashing, and are the royal family worshippers of the Kangyu dynasty. Their strength is only stronger than Du Yulin. At this time, the two of them joined forces. Even if the saintly strongman came in person, it would be difficult to get any benefits for a while. This is also the reason why they dare to come to the Great Qin dynasty. Even if the Great Qin patriarch revives, they can take Princess Kangyu away calmly. Bold. Seeing that the two dared to make trouble in the court, Du Yulin was furious. He stomped his feet on the ground, and his energy surged out, like a tide, and slapped the two old men in green clothes to kill them. It's just a trick. One of the old men laughed grimly, stretched out his hand and grabbed it, and a long sword emerged. When he waved it, it was like a phantom of flowing clouds, and it completely offset Du Yulin's attack. Another old man flicked his sleeves, and a ball of green flame floated out, which instantly spread and enveloped Du Yulin. Humph! Du Yulin groaned, his face flushed slightly, and he was obviously injured. National Master. Seeing that Du Yulin was in danger, the ministers exclaimed. Qin Mu was not moved, and looked at the two old men calmly. Do you really think that there is no one in my great Qin? The two old men laughed when they heard this. The great Qin still has its foundation, so we too naturally dare not be so arrogant, but since the negotiations have collapsed, there is no need for us to stay here any longer. You great Qin will wait for the army of my Kangyu dynasty to arrive at the city. After saying that, the two of them turned around and left with boundless murderous aura. They originally thought that Qin Mu would compromise for the sake of the overall situation, but they never thought that the other party would be so determined. Since that's the case, then we won't be polite. Let's go. The girl in the blue skirt snorted coldly. She immediately followed the two and left, but before leaving, she glanced at Qin Mu. Today's humiliation will be avenged another day. Qin Mu said coldly, did I let you go? Huh. The two of them paused and looked back. Qin Mu slowly stood up, his bright yellow robe gleaming in the sun. He looked down at the two of them with extremely cold eyes. What? Your Majesty, do you still want to keep us for dinner? The two old men sneered. The Qin imperial family has declined to this point, and the emperor is so incompetent. If he had not been afraid of his past, he would have destroyed it long ago. What's so scary about a mere Qin Mu? Boom. As soon as the two spoke, they felt an extremely hot burning sensation rising all over their bodies. It seemed that they were standing in a furnace of 10,000 years, about to melt into magma. Indistinctly, they seemed to see a huge black earthenware jar descending from the void, swallowing up the entire world. There was also a mask of a crying and laughing ghost face engraved on the jar, which was hideous and terrifying, revealing an unparalleled fierceness. That kind of pressure made them shudder. Endless gloomy black fog spread out from the earthen jar, instantly covering the entire hall, blocking the void. Seal the hall tightly. What is that? The two people's hearts twitched fiercely, and their pupils shrank. But they were strong men at the level of Jean Dao after all, and they reacted instantly. One of them stomped his legs on the ground, and retreated with the help of the recoil force. The other person's figure was swaying, turning into a ghost, and rushed towards the door of the hall. But the next moment, they were shocked to find that all the surrounding scenery was distorted, and there was no way to escape. Bang! The next moment, a white, jade-like, smooth and shiny palm suddenly appeared and slapped the two people's chests. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 22. Crack. Crack. The sound of bones breaking came into my ears. Puff. Puff. Then, two blood arrows shot out, dyeing the hall red. The two powerful Dao-killing masters were completely powerless under the white and slender palm. This scene stunned all the civil and military officials. Who is it? Come out for me. The two old men in green covered their abdomens, their hearts beating violently, their hearts like drums. But the strange thing was that in their field of vision, except for the young man in the bright yellow dragon robe, there was no one else. Boom. Visible ripples rippled in the hall. The two old men in green changed their faces, and ripples rippled past. The momentum of the two men dropped suddenly, and they were unable to mobilize the spiritual energy in their bodies like ordinary people. Plop! Plop! The next moment, they knelt on their knees, their foreheads touching the ground, trembling. How is it possible? What kind of magical power is this? Why can't our spiritual sense detect anyone around? The two old men in green showed panic and despair. They are the powerful swordsmen of the Xuanhuan dynasty, and their combat power is extremely strong. They also have special soul secrets that can sense any life energy within a range of 500 miles. But at this time, they can't even capture the other party's figure, or even detect the slightest breath. That can only prove that the person who came is far better than them. Your Majesty, spare my life! The two screamed in shock. At this time, they finally realized that something was wrong. Swish! At this moment, a dark sword light suddenly cut through the void and slashed towards one of them. This time, he did not dodge, because everyone present had nowhere to escape. Puff! The dark sword light slashed through and split the old man's eyebrows in half. Immediately, in the horrified eyes of everyone, the old man's soul was swallowed up by the black earthenware jar. Blood splattered all over the ground. A huge head shot up into the sky. This. Seeing this bloody scene, all the civil and military officials were so frightened that they were silent and almost fainted. One sword. The strong man of the Xuanhuan died. This scene scared everyone. That was a strong man of the Xuanhuan. He was killed in the blink of an eye. Your Majesty, please spare my life. We are just following orders. The remaining old man burst into tears and begged for mercy frantically. However, Xuanhuan seemed to have heard nothing, just sitting quietly on the throne, his eyes calm and calm. Then, another sword mark crossed the sky. Finally, it stopped at the old man's throat. Just one more inch forward, it would cut the throat and behead him. No. The old man's face twitched, his eyes bulged, and his pupils shrank like needles. He desperately urged the spirit platform to resist this sword, but it was still useless. Puff! The dark sword light flashed, the blade entered the throat. And a bunch of blood flowers bloomed. The old man's head rolled down directly. Until his death, the old man couldn't believe why he would fall in this chain. Hiss! There was silence in the hall, everyone took a breath, and looked at the figure above the hall in disbelief. No one would have thought that a generation of powerful slashing masters would die in this way. How is this possible? Seeing this scene, the blue-skirted girl's pretty face turned pale, her body trembled, and her beautiful eyes were full of horror. How is this possible? All this happened in a flash, from the beginning to the end, only a few breaths passed. A powerful slashing master couldn't even escape? She couldn't believe her eyes. She couldn't help but look up, and saw that the man in the bright yellow imperial crown was still sitting on the royal chair, supporting his head with one hand and holding the wine glass with the other, tasting the fine wine leisurely. You. The girl in the blue skirt looked at Xuanhuan on the throne, and her delicate body couldn't help trembling. She thought of Xuanhuan's previous words. The woman was sent to the palace as a slave. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. The girl in the blue skirt gritted her teeth, and a look of resentment flashed in her eyes. I am the princess of the Xuanhuan dynasty. If you dare to touch me, Her Majesty the Empress will never let you go. The girl in the blue skirt had an icy voice. Sharp and piercing, filled with extremely strong hatred. You are wrong. Xuanhuan looked at her indifferently, as if he was looking at a lowly ant, without any pity, and a mocking arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. You are just a dog. The girl in the blue skirt glared at her with her beautiful eyes, and wanted to say something, but she had no chance. A woman with a misty figure, like a banished immortal, suddenly appeared, overlooking the girl in the blue skirt. Her face was cold, as holy as the bright moon hanging high in the sky, keeping people away from her. Her green clothes made her look as pure and flawless as a water lotus. The most eye-catching thing was that there was a purple gold symbol between her eyebrows, emitting a faint fluorescence, which was very sacred. But the strange thing was that there was no emotion in her autumn eyes, only a void. Like the black ice that never melted for thousands of years, it made people palpitate. Luoxiu. That's right, she was not a human, but one of Qin Mu's 9 saint puppets. I have to say that the system is very considerate. Even the 9 saint puppets given to Qin Mu were in the form of fairies, and the 9 saint puppets focused on different cultivation methods, which also made them good at different things. For example, the saint puppet in front of him, named Luoxiu by Qin Mu, was very good at assassination. Just now, it was she who cooperated with Qin Mu's devouring heaven magic pot to kill the 2 old men in the Dao-slaying realm in a flash. At this time, Luoxiu stretched out her hand and grabbed the blue-skirted girl in her hand. The blue-skirted girl's spiritual power was boiling all over her body, and she tried to struggle. Snap! But she was only in the purple mansion realm. How could she break free from the restraints of a saint? Even the defensive armor covering her body had lost its effect and could not block anything at all. There was no chance to use her powerful magic weapon. No, let go. The blue-skirted girl's face was as pale as paper, and she was extremely terrified. I am a princess of the Kanyu imperial family. If you dare to hurt me, Her Majesty the Empress will not let you go. At this moment, the blue-skirted girl was extremely anxious. Noisy. Luoxiu frowned slightly, and slapped the blue-skirted girl with one palm, knocking her unconscious on the spot, completely losing the power to resist. Withdraw from the court. After dealing with the 2, Qin Mu slowly stood up and gave a faint order. Then, he left the hall amid the shocked and inexplicable gazes of the ministers. Only 2 headless corpses and a floor of scarlet and dazzling blood were left behind. The ministers looked at each other in bewilderment. After a long time, they gradually came to their senses. Your Majesty, did you really kill the envoy of the Kanyu dynasty? One minister swallowed his saliva and muttered to himself. Too many things happened today. First, the news that the Kanyu dynasty was going to unite with the Xuanhuan dynasty was received, and then a series of humiliating regulations were issued. In the end, the 2 powerful slayers were killed by His Majesty, and Princess Kanyu was even demoted to a slave in the palace. This huge reversal was enough to make them remember it for the rest of their lives. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 23. What a foolish ruler. Killing the Kanyu envoy may be a relief, but it will definitely annoy the Kanyu dynasty. A war is inevitable. An old minister sighed and shook his head. Yes, I'm afraid it will cause trouble. Alas. Your Majesty is too young and hot-tempered. It's really wrong. It's just the 3 states in the northern border. It's fine to cede them, but now the great Qin is going to perish. Princess Kanyu is the favorite adopted daughter of the Kanyu queen, but your Majesty demoted her to a slave, which is no less than a slap in the face of the Kanyu queen. The great Qin is really finished now. Foolish. It's really extremely foolish. A burst of discussions broke out. Many ministers looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Although Qin Mu showed the power to kill the strong men in the Zhan Dao realm, but the ministers were still not optimistic. After all, 1 or 2 top combat forces in a battle did not mean anything. The Kanyu Empire has a profound foundation and has developed rapidly in the past 2 years. Whether it is the backbone or the top force, it has long surpassed the great Qin dynasty. Moreover, the newly appointed Kanyu Empress is a wise ruler. Under her governance, the Kanyu dynasty is thriving, unlike the tyrannical and incompetent Qin emperor. How can such a Kangyu empress be so easy to deal with? The most important thing is that their enemies are not only the Kangyu dynasty, but also the Qianyuan dynasty is eyeing them covetously. In this way, the two countries will surely cooperate to destroy Qin. A group of old ministers sighed. They never thought that His Majesty would be so incompetent. Directly killed the two Kangyu envoys. This time, it can be said that it broke the sky. After a long silence, the national teacher Du Yulin said in a low voice. Pass the order down, keep the secret strictly, and do not reveal any wind for the time being. Hearing this, many officials shook their heads and sighed. Master, you and I both know how long we can keep it a secret. This matter cannot be concealed at all. Your Majesty killed the two envoys and made a deadly feud with the Kangyu dynasty. The Kangyu queen will never let it go. Just wait, soon, the Kangyu queen will lead troops to attack Dakan. Alas, this foolish monarch is really the misfortune of my Dakan. Amidst the indignation and curses, the ministers dispersed one after another. Qin Shijing, the king of Hengyang, had a flickering look on his face. Humph, this foolish monarch actually did such a foolish thing. He secretly hated in his heart, no matter what, he must be eliminated as soon as possible, otherwise, my Qin royal family will be destroyed in his hands sooner or later. He didn't want to become the last emperor of Dakan as soon as he came to power. Qin Shijing walked out of the palace gate and returned to his own palace. He immediately summoned a group of trusted advisors and began to discuss countermeasures. Soon, news was passed out one by one. The whole imperial city was in an uproar. The Kangyu dynasty intended to join hands with the Qianyuan dynasty to destroy Qin. The Kangyu envoy was beheaded by the dynasty, and the Kangyu princess was demoted to a slave. One piece of news after another swept through like a hurricane. What? The Kangyu dynasty envoy was killed. Princess Kangyu was also demoted to the Yating palace and became a slave. Who can tell me what happened? What on earth is your Majesty thinking? Even if the two countries are at war, they will not kill the envoys. He has not really fought yet, and he killed the envoy of the Kangyu dynasty first. Your Majesty is crazy. Is he going to force the Kangyu dynasty to invade the Qin dynasty? What a foolish monarch. The troops in the north plus the Kangyu dynasty, the Qin dynasty is really going to be finished. What is your Majesty doing? How dare he be so reckless? Stupid! Stupid! Exclamations rang out from all over the imperial city, and everyone was in a state of confusion. In just a few days, a great uproar broke out in Chang'an city, causing a violent shock. Everyone was stunned. No one had ever thought that Qin Mu would suddenly make such a crazy move. This was simply a provocation to the entire Kangyu dynasty. You know, the Kangyu dynasty is one of the three overlords of the Tianlan domain, and its strength is not inferior to that of the Qin dynasty. If the war really started, it would be a tragic consequence of the suffering of the people, the displacement of the people, and the suffering of hundreds of millions of people. Such a war, regardless of winning or losing, will cause extremely huge losses to the Qin dynasty. Even, it will make the Qin dynasty fall into an irreversible situation. For a while, everyone thought that this was Qin Mu's stupid move and a sign before the disaster of the Qin dynasty came. The major families, sects, and royal relatives of the Qin imperial city were shocked. They all realized that a huge disaster had enveloped the Qin dynasty. However, there were also a few ordinary people with blood who thought that Qin Mu did nothing wrong and even inspired people. But after all, they were a minority. Most people thought that Qin Mu was too impulsive, which pushed the Qin dynasty to the brink of destruction. Qin Mu's reputation for incompetence reached a new high. Inside the palace, Qin Mu didn't care about anything in the outside world. He sat cross-legged on the dragon throne. A pale golden divine pattern appeared on his body. The divine pattern surrounded him, shining with brilliant light, making him look like a golden holy emperor, majestic and extraordinary. As time went by, the light on the divine pattern became more and more brilliant, full of charm, and in the trance there was a taste of simplicity and returning to nature. Buzz. The next moment, with the trembling of the void, Qin Mu slowly opened his eyes. In an instant, a surge of pressure poured out like a tide, filling the entire hall. Rumble. At this moment, the air in the hall seemed to boil, and circles of ripples spread out. This pressure was so strong that even the guards around the hall felt as if they were suppressed by a sacred mountain. Bang bang bang. Unable to withstand the huge pressure, some guards with weaker cultivation immediately knelt on the ground, trembling all over. What a strong physical strength! Qin Mu clenched his fists, only to feel that his physical strength was several times stronger than before. Just now, he once again received the stupid reward from the system, 500 years of pure cultivation. He absorbed it directly without hesitation. In an instant, his cultivation level was raised. If he hadn't stopped in time, I'm afraid everything in this hall would have been shattered. 9th level of Shenzang realm, not bad. Qin Mu nodded slightly, quite satisfied. The further you go in the cultivation path, the more difficult it becomes. At the same time, it takes more time and energy, and the resources consumed are even more massive. Qin Mu didn't spend much effort, but he got a total of 1,000 years of pure cultivation, which can be said to be a huge profit. If ordinary cultivators knew, they would be envious to death. I should go and see how the Princess Canyu has been adjusted. I wonder if she can still maintain her original arrogance. Qin Mu's mouth raised a little arc, and a hint of teasing flashed across his eyes. The night was deep and dark as ink. A solitary moon rose, and the silver light fell, illuminating the palace. Qin Mu walked out of the bedroom with light steps and stepped into the night wind. Yeting Palace. Ah! The shrill scream echoed in the palace, sounding extremely harsh. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 24. You bastard! You dare to hurt me! Her Majesty the Empress will never forgive you. Let me go. The shrill screams were mixed with strong resentment and hatred. I saw it in the center of the solemn hall. A beautiful woman in a blue dress was tied to the torture rack. At this moment, her arms were tied behind her back, with a look of panic on her face. But more of it is resentment and cruelty. At this time, she was struggling desperately and shouting. Astonishingly, it was Princess Canyu of the Canyu dynasty. At this time, a group of palace ladies holding torture instruments were surrounding her. Princess Canyu's face was pale, her hair was messy, her clothes were torn, and she looked extremely miserable. How does she look like a princess now? It's like a lost dog. Your Highness Princess Canyu, you'd better save some energy and stop talking. At this time, a plump female officer with a charming smile spoke up and comforted her softly. Although there was a smile on her lips, her eyes were cold and her tone was cold. This is a chief in the Yeting Palace, who is responsible for spurring the disobedient servants in the Yeting Palace. You bunch of cheap maids, I am the royal princess of Canyu, how can I allow you to be humiliated? Hearing the words of the female officer, Princess Canyu immediately roared angrily, with a vicious light flashing in her eyes, wanting to peel the female officer's skin and convulse her. After hearing her words, the other palace ladies around them all sneered and looked disdainful. Crack! The female officer snorted coldly, raised her hand and slapped Princess Canyu on the cheek. Ba bang bang! The next moment, he slapped her 3 times in a row, causing Princess Canyu's delicate face to become red and swollen. You bitch, how dare you hit me? Just wait. When I escape from prison, I will definitely kill you bunch of bastards. Princess Canyu had a red and swollen cheek, and her eyes were full of hatred. She is a royal princess with an extremely high status. She enjoys the treatment of stars wherever she goes. She has never suffered such humiliation today. Sooner or later, she was going to make these bastards pay the price. You still dare to contradict me? Keep pushing me. Seeing this, the female officer snorted coldly. The next moment, several graceful and beautiful maids in palace attire stepped forward, each holding a special long whip in their hands. The long whip is dark brown in color, with dense runes imprinted on its surface, which can greatly slow down the recovery speed of the whipped person's injuries and amplify the pain. Snap! The long whip swung and hit the girl in the blue dress hard. Ah! No! A shrill wail came from the mouth of the girl in the blue dress. She twisted desperately, trying to avoid the attack of the long whip, but it was to no avail. Snap! One whip after another, each whip contains strong laws, tearing the air apart and causing bursts of sonic booms. Soon, the delicate body of the girl in the blue skirt was covered with flogging marks, which was shocking. Okay, stop. Suddenly, at this moment, a clear voice came from a distance. Immediately afterwards, Qin Mu, dressed in purple robe, stepped into the hall. Greetings to your majesty. Seeing Qin Mu's arrival, the female officer immediately stopped her whipping work and knelt down respectfully. Their eyes were filled with awe and admiration. Qin Mu's power has penetrated into the deepest part of their hearts. Hearing this, the girl in the blue dress who was already dying suddenly straightened her back, with endless hatred in her eyes. You beast, how dare you torture me like this? I will definitely kill you, I will. She roared and struggled wildly. Hee hee. Qin Mu chuckled, stepped closer, looked at Princess Kanyu, and narrowed his eyes. At this time, Princess Kanyu was thin, with a haggard appearance, her clothes were torn, and her hair was extremely fluffy. She looked like a beggar, and she was not even half as noble and elegant as before. Especially when he looked at Qin Mu, he looked like he wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood, just like an evil ghost in hell. He no longer looked fearless and arrogant in the court. How is it? Our Princess Kanyu used to staying here? Qin Mu stood with his hands behind his hands and asked jokingly with a smile. Qin Mu. Her Majesty the Empress will never let you go. Princess Kanyu looked at Qin Mu viciously, with overwhelming hatred, and she gritted her teeth and spoke. Oh! You know my name quite well, but it's a pity that I don't know your name yet. Hearing this, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Princess Kanyu with interest. You don't deserve to know. I will never tell you. Princess Kanyu snorted coldly and turned her head away proudly. Okay. Since you don't want to talk, let's talk about something else. Qin Mu shrugged his shoulders and said calmly. Humph. Qin Mu, you loser, if you can, kill me. However, Princess Kanyu did not want to talk to Qin Mu and still spoke stubbornly. Kill you? Ha ha. Qin Mu smiled when he heard this. He looked at Princess Kanyu and spoke slowly. Killing you would be too cheap for you. I want to keep your life and let you see with your own eyes how the Kanyu dynasty was destroyed at my feet. Ha 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 ha. Hearing these words, Princess Kanyu, who was still a little depressed, instantly burst out laughing crazily. Qin Mu. You are indeed the most incompetent emperor in the history of the Qin dynasty. You are so delusional. You will never understand what you are doing. You will never understand how powerful the empress of my Kanyu dynasty is. If you know what's good for you, let me go. Otherwise, I guarantee that you will die miserably. Princess Kanyu sneered repeatedly, with a strong contempt in her eyes. As if mocking Qin Mu's stupidity. Qin Mu smiled faintly. He slowly stretched out his fingers and pinched Princess Kanyu's snow-white and delicate jaw. You, what do you want to do? Princess Kanyu's pretty face turned pale, and a trace of fear flashed in her eyes. Don't be nervous, Princess Canyu has come from afar. As the host, I naturally have to give you a gift. Qin Mu's mouth corners slightly raised, revealing a hint of evil smile. The next moment, he saw his fingertips lightly tap, and a strange purple light sank into Princess Canyu's body. In an instant, Princess Canyu was shocked, her beautiful eyes widened, and her eyebrows knitted tightly. She felt a heat flow through her body, and finally condensed in her lower abdomen. What did you do? Feeling the increasingly strange burning sensation in her lower abdomen, Princess Canyu's face was extremely ugly. She looked down, and through the torn dress, she could see that a strange pattern was slowly outlined on her lower abdomen. The pattern was dark purple, like a butterfly flapping its wings and about to fly, with a heart between the wings of the butterfly, which looked extremely charming and full of temptation. What is this? Seeing the dark purple pattern, Princess Canyu was horrified. She wanted to reach out and touch it, but her arms were tied up by iron chains and she couldn't move. She could only watch the dark red pattern spread rapidly. As the pattern gradually took shape, her body suddenly became soft and weak. Ah, what did you do to me? Princess Canyu screamed when she realized something was wrong with her body, looking panicked. Don't worry, Princess Canyu, you will be freed soon. Looking at the panicked Princess Canyu, Qin Mu's smile became more evil. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 25. You bastard. Hearing Qin Mu's voice and seeing his aggressive eyes, Princess Canyu suddenly felt a chill in her heart. Although she didn't know what the other party was doing, it was definitely not a good thing. Qin Mu smiled and didn't answer. He stood there, watching quietly, with an inexplicable light flashing in his eyes. This pattern is naturally the mark of the ancient demon clan. Princess Canyu's realm is only the Purple Mansion realm. His strength of the 9th level of the Shenzang realm is more than enough to plant the demon clan mark on her. Finally, when the dark purple pattern was completely formed, Princess Canyu's delicate body trembled, and she felt an unwarranted fear in her heart. Just when she was about to say something, she suddenly froze in place. What's going on? Princess Canyu's heart jumped, and she was horrified to find that she couldn't control her body. Not only that, even her mind was blank. It was as if all her thoughts were stripped away, and she was stunned in place. After just a few seconds, the anger on Princess Canyu's face, who had been madly cursing Qin Mu, slowly faded, replaced by endless tenderness and love. Master! Princess Canyu raised her head, her eyes were like water, her face was blushing, and she spoke in a gentle tone. Her voice was extremely sweet, like a spring breeze blowing on a willow, intoxicating. At this time, Princess Canyu looked no different from a normal person. But only Qin Mu knew that her mind and her soul had been completely controlled by the demon clan mark. At this moment, she was left with only instinct and loyalty to him. There was only Qin Mu in her eyes, and only Qin Mu in her heart. Is this the power of the demon clan mark? It's really domineering. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration. This demon clan mark is really mysterious and can turn enemies into slaves. And what's even more terrifying is that once the demon clan mark takes effect, even if the caster dies or fails, the other party will not recover. Because the demon clan mark has long been integrated into the other party's body and is connected to his soul. Even if the caster dies, the demonic mark still exists and can continue to affect the target. Of course, this demonic mark is not omnipotent. If the opponent's cultivation is higher than Qin Mu, it will be difficult to continue to control the demonic mark. With Qin Mu's current strength, he can only manipulate the existence below the Shenzang realm at most. However, as Qin Mu's strength grows, he can use the demonic mark to obtain more information, and subdue more subordinates, strengthen his own power, and disintegrate the enemy from within. With a curve at the corner of Qin Mu's mouth, he walked forward slowly and stroked Princess Kanyu's hair. But at this moment, Princess Kanyu did not resist at all, but obeyed his touch like a well-behaved and obedient pet. Seeing this scene, the maids on the side were stunned, and even suspected that they had hallucinations. This Princess Kanyu was clearly swearing to die and not obeying. How could she be like a different person in the blink of an eye? But Princess Kanyu ignored these people at all. At this moment, she was completely lost in Qin Mu's demon mark. She had only one thought in her mind, which was to obey Qin Mu's will and become his most loyal servant. No matter what you were called before, from now on, you will be called Kanyu. After touching Princess Kanyu's hair for a few times, Qin Mu stopped and smiled lightly. Kanyu heard this and immediately said respectfully, "Thank you for the name, Master." "Yes." Nodding with satisfaction, Qin Mu waved his right hand lightly and opened the iron chain on Kanyu's body. After Princess Kanyu was freed, she immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Qin Mu with an extremely pious attitude. "Master, do you have any other instructions?" Princess Kanyu raised her head, her eyes were blurred, and bursts of pink peach blossoms shone in the depths of her eyes. "I'm a little angry now." Qin Mu narrowed his eyes slightly, and a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. Hearing this, Princess Kanyu immediately understood, smiled charmingly, stepped on the cold stone slab with her slender feet, and took 2 steps forward gently. Then she made a move that even Qin Mu could not expect. Qin Mu's eyes lit up slightly. Seeing this scene, many palace maids showed strong jealousy in their eyes, and they wanted to rush over to replace Princess Kanyu immediately. But even they had to admit that a princess is a princess, and they play different tricks. However, at this moment, Princess Kanyu suddenly trembled all over, and a trace of struggle and confusion appeared in her eyes. Then, she gritted her teeth suddenly, her eyes suddenly changed, and a look of pain appeared on her pretty face. "I am the princess of the Kanyu dynasty. My name is not Kanyu, my name is Jiqingxiu." Princess Kanyu murmured in pain, her body trembling violently. As these words were spoken, Princess Kanyu took 2 steps back, and her eyes became clear again. "What did you do just now?" She looked at Qin Mu in horror, her beautiful face full of fear. Just a moment ago, she felt a strange force that directly entered her spiritual sea of consciousness, making her lose her mind. At that moment, she almost sank, but fortunately, she had a strong willpower and barely regained consciousness. "Oh! You woke up." Looking at Princess Kanyu's horrified expression, Qin Mu shook his head with a look of regret on his face. However, Qin Mu had expected this scene. Because the introduction of the demon clan mark says, the specific effect depends on the firmness of the opponent's mind. The stronger the mind, the stronger the resistance to the demon clan mark. And the weaker the mind, the lower the resistance to the demon clan mark, and finally they are manipulated by the demon clan mark and become demon puppets. This Jiqingxiu is only an adopted daughter, but she can step by step reach the status of a princess named Kanyu. Obviously, her mind is beyond the reach of ordinary people. Moreover, her cultivation has reached the peak of the Purple Mansion realm. Such talent and qualifications are already outstanding among the younger generation. If she didn't have this mind, how could she have come to this day? So Qin Mu was not surprised that Jiqingxiu could temporarily escape the control of the demon clan mark. But it doesn't matter. Jiqingxiu has been marked by the demon clan, and it is impossible to get rid of it. There is still a long way to go, and there is still time. What kind of evil magic is this? How did you do it, you tyrant? Jiqingxiu used the pitiful cloth to protect herself tightly, staring at Qin Mu, her beautiful eyes filled with shock and confusion. The situation just now was simply unbelievable, completely subverting her cognition. At this moment, Jiqingxiu was still in shock. If she didn't wake up, her ending would be extremely miserable. Thinking of the actions she had just made, Xiaqiangxiu felt ashamed and disgusted. She actually did such a thing to this tyrant emperor, she was really crazy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 26. Seeing Xiaqiangxiu's disgusted and horrified expression, Qin Mu smiled slightly and asked with interest. How about it, do you feel that you have fallen in love with me and are willing to give everything for me? Hearing this, Xiaqiangxiu's cheeks suddenly turned red, she glared at Qin Mu angrily, and shouted angrily. Shameless! Vulgar! Despicable! Shameless! Foolish king! And the next moment, her eyes were fierce, and regardless of her spring, she lightly tapped the ground with her lotus feet, and actually jumped up. The light in her hand turned into a long sword, cutting through the air and stabbing Qin Mu in the chest. Although all her space magic weapons have been taken away, there are still many magical weapons in the Dao Palace, which are enough to deal with the fatuous emperor in front of her. Xiaqiangxiu's eyes were full of resentment and determination. Since it was already difficult for her to escape, she would kill this thief even if she risked her life. Create more favorable conditions for Her Majesty the Empress. This strike was as fast as thunder, and the fierce murderous intent made the surrounding space seem to freeze. The surrounding maids Gongyi didn't even have time to react. Looking at the sharp sword coming towards him, Qin Mu did not dodge, as if he was not aware of it, and just looked at her calmly. Qin Mu slowly raised his left arm and gently clamped Jian Shui's long sword. Click! The long sword broke, and the fragments flew away, leaving a silver-white trail in the air. Qin Mu exerted a little force, and the long sword broke instantly. At the same time, Qin Mu reached out with his other hand and accurately grasped Qiangxiu's small hand holding the incomplete long sword. Ah! A sharp scream resounded through the sky, and Xiaqiangxiu's delicate body stiffened suddenly. Xiaqiangxiu only felt a huge force coming from her. She flew out uncontrollably and landed heavily in the pool in the distance, causing a large wave of water. Her body was soaked in the water, and her clothes were wet and clung to her delicate body, outlining seductive lines. Xiaqiangxiu was lying in the water. The cold touch on her body made her shiver, but it was more of humiliation. You actually hide your strength. Xiaqiangxiu climbed up from the water with difficulty, her beautiful eyes filled with tears of anger and humiliation. She always thought that the other party was just a fatuous emperor, and his ability to survive until now was all due to the legacy left by Great Qin. Unexpectedly, she was wrong, and very wrong. This man is not as weak as he appears. She even felt that the other party was much stronger than her. Just relying on physical strength, he easily broke her rainbow sword. With such strength, I am afraid it has reached the level of Shenzang, right? Thinking of this, Xiaqiangxiu's beautiful eyes were filled with shock. How is this a fatuous emperor? This is obviously a guy who pretends to be a pig and eats the tiger. Xiaqiangxiu's heart sank. This means that the information from Kangyu dynasty is wrong. In other words, this fatuous emperor hides too many things. She must get out alive and inform His Majesty of this information. Xiaqiangxiu's eyes flickered. The surrounding maids and palace ladies also reacted, their expressions changed one after another, and they hurriedly protected Qin Mu, preparing to take down Xiaqiangxiu. It doesn't matter, let her stay for now. Qin Mu waved his hand to stop everyone's actions, and then slowly sat on the dragon chair, admiring the girl's embarrassed appearance. After a while, Xiaqiangxiu gradually regained her composure, and her face gradually became cold. She struggled to stand up and gritted her teeth and said, Qin Mu, as long as you let me go, I can plead with Her Majesty the Empress and persuade her to cooperate with Great Qin to deal with the Qianyuan dynasty. At this moment, Xiaqiangxiu's clothes were soaked through, but she still stood upright and spoke proudly. This gesture once again confused the palace maids. Just now, he was obviously looking so charming and humble, and he was shouting to His Majesty like a master. How come he was about to assassinate His Majesty in the blink of an eye, and yet he changed back to his original arrogant look? But I have to say, this sense of contrast, it's really addictive. Hearing this, Qin Mu had a playful smile on his lips. Oh? Really? I'll have to think about it then. Seeing that Qin Mu seemed to be persuaded, Xiaqiangxiu felt hopeful and continued. As long as we can join forces, the destruction of the Qianyuan dynasty will be just around the corner. The corners of Qin Mu's lips curled up slightly. Okay, I promise you. Hearing this, Xiaqiangxiu's eyes brightened slightly, and she was about to strike while the iron was hot and continue speaking. However, before she could say anything, Qin Mu suddenly stood up, walked slowly towards her, reached out and lifted her white and delicate chin. You, what are you doing? Xiaqiangxiu's pretty face turned red, her heart beat faster, and her breathing almost stopped. The feeling just now came to mind again, making her heart tremble and her delicate body feel weak. What kind of conspiracy is this bastard playing? Qin Mu's eyes were dark and deep, and there seemed to be stars rotating in them, with a ray of dark light, which was so deep and vast that it made people panic. Qin Mu raised a playful smile at the corner of his mouth, looked at her indifferently, and said in a rather joking tone, "Actually, I have a better idea." Having said this, Qin Mu leaned slightly towards Xiaqiangxiu's ear, his voice was gentle and magnetic. "Why don't you go and persuade your Majesty the Empress to become my crotch slave?" Hearing this, Xiaqiangxiu's face changed drastically, and she quickly took 2 steps back, shouting in shock and anger, "How dare you! I won't allow you to insult our queen." The dim light in Qin Mu's eyes became brighter, and Xiaqiangxiu felt her heart tremble and her soul was trembling. The next moment, a familiar yet unfamiliar feeling surged through her body, and Xiaqiangxiu felt a buzzing in her mind and a trance. She felt that her thinking was getting slower and slower, and finally lost in this strange feeling. Qin Mu smiled, and the dim light in his eyes became brighter. Xiaqiangxiu was controlled by the demon mark again. At this moment, she no longer cared about everything she had experienced in the past, her identity, or the so-called Queen Canyu. She just stared at Qin Mu blankly, her eyes full of love and admiration. She only felt that the man in front of her was her heaven, her everything, and her only salvation. Seeing Xiaqiangxiu's infatuated eyes, Qin Mu shook his head. "It's boring, I still think you were more interesting just now. Sometimes being too obedient is not good, it will reduce a lot of fun. However, in order to make this Princess Canyu play a role as soon as possible, Qin Mu can only speed up the progress." Time swayed, and soon 2 hours passed. At the beginning, I gave the future Empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 27. Qin Mu sat on the soft dragon chair, looking lazy. Behind him stood several plump young maids, massaging his shoulders and legs. Xiaqiangxiu knelt at his feet, extremely respectful, like a docile cat, ready to be slaughtered. Her pretty face was full of blush, her eyes were hazy as if she was drunk, and she looked extremely charming and seductive. However, Qin Mu was not in the mood to appreciate the girl's charm at this time. In front of him, a jade talisman was suspended in the air, emitting a bright luster. In the center of the luster, there was a landscape painting. The picture was lifelike, like a real scene, with flowing water and waterfalls, verdant ancient trees, and so on. In the center of the landscape painting, there was a towering and huge ancient city, majestic, as if a giant beast was dormant between heaven and earth, as if it had existed since ancient times, exuding a simple and desolate atmosphere. And all around the ancient city, there are all kinds of small cities. Some of those cities are magnificent, some are exquisite and beautiful, some are magnificent and majestic, and some are small and exquisite. Qin Mu looked at the scene in the jade talisman, and his mouth curled up slightly. This is the map of the Kangyu dynasty. Generally speaking, only the Kangyu royal family has this jade talisman, and outsiders can never get it. Because, in each jade talisman, detailed information about the entire Kangyu dynasty is recorded. There are a total of 96 cities in the Kangyu dynasty, of which 28 belong to the territories of the major vassal kings, and the remaining 68 belong directly to the royal family. In each city, the most elite soldiers and troops of the Kangyu dynasty are stationed, guarded by strong men from all sides, and guarding the capital. This has built a stable defense system for the Kangyu dynasty. If you want to break through the imperial city, you must first break through the army blockade before you can conquer the royal family and disintegrate the entire imperial city. Moreover, these cities are all built with teleportation arrays. If you want to dispatch a large army to attack or support a region, it can be done in an instant. You can even dispatch millions of troops from the headquarters of the dynasty, and rush to various places in a moment to form a siege. And this is all the masterpiece of the Kangyu queen, which shows how clever her methods are. Of course, the foundation of the Kangyu royal family is far from being as simple as it appears on the surface. In addition to these, there are many hidden cards. Even Ji Qingxiu, the princess of Kangyu, does not know these cards very well. She only knows that these cards are enough to protect the eternal foundation of the Kangyu royal family from being threatened. Not only that, when the Kangyu queen ascended the throne, she used iron-blooded tactics to take all the armies and high-end combat forces in the hands of the major vassal kings and firmly control them in her own hands. Moreover, after the Kangyu queen ascended the throne, she also issued a decree. Whether it is the important officials of the dynasty or the common people, if they make mistakes, they must be held accountable to serve as a warning to others. Therefore, no matter noble or humble, everyone in the dynasty followed this law and dared not to go beyond it. This law had a wide influence and was unanimously recognized by the people. And the Kangyu empress was also known as the first wise ruler of the Kangyu dynasty. Compared with Qin Mu's reputation, one was in heaven and the other was on earth, and there was no comparison. Tisk 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 tisk, this Kangyu empress is really powerful, and she has the entire dynasty firmly in her hands, Qin Mu praised. Such an ambitious, powerful, and resourceful opponent is not easy to deal with. But since he decided to take action against the Kangyu dynasty, Qin Mu was already prepared. Qin Mu turned his eyes away from the map and looked at Ji Qingxiu crawling on the ground, with a wicked arc at the corner of his mouth. He stretched out his fingers to tease the girl's delicate chin, and asked in a low voice, "What is the weakness of the Kangyu queen?" Xie Qingxiu raised her eyes, confused and charming, and replied softly, Reply to the master, I don't know the weakness of Ji Hongii. Xie Hongii is the name of the Kangyu queen. Although she is Xie Hongii's goddaughter, Xie Hongii's whereabouts are secretive and she is often alone, and even she rarely sees her. In Xie Qingxiu's memory, Xie Hongii often wears a red dress, with a gorgeous face and peerless elegance, like a fairy in the sky, ethereal and out of the world, but with a cold and arrogant temperament. She is mysterious and powerful, and almost no one knows how strong she is. She is extremely intelligent and has an iron fist. She plays with several major vassal kings of the Kangyu dynasty. She loves the people like her own children, treats the people well, governs the Kangyu dynasty in an orderly manner, and pushes the Kangyu dynasty to the peak. She is the most benevolent and cruel empress in the history of Kangyu dynasty. Xie Qingxiu has always regarded Xie Hongii as her idol, a figure she needs to pursue with her whole life. Of course, Xie Qingxiu has long forgotten about Li Hongii, and there is only one man in her mind, Qin Mu. Although it is only a short period of time, Xie Qingxiu's mind has not been completely destroyed, and she may still break free from the mark of the demon clan at any time. Are you sure, Qin Mu raised his eyebrows. I really don't know. I rarely shows up. Only when I go to court, I occasionally have the opportunity to see her. Xiu bit her cherry lips, lowered her eyes, and her voice trembled, as if she was ashamed of not being able to help her master. Qin Mu nodded, and he was not too surprised about this. After all, if he could find out the flaws and weaknesses of the Kanyu Empress so easily, he would find it strange. She was not worthy of being called the most powerful empress in the history of the Kanyu dynasty. At this moment, Ji Qingxiu's delicate body trembled, and her beautiful eyes gradually regained clarity, and the scenes of her experience just now suddenly flooded into her mind. How could I? Ji Qingxiu was horrified to death, and looked at Qin Mu with an extremely ashamed and angry face, and shouted angrily, "Asshole! What did you do to me?" She felt a tearing pain all over her body, numb and weak, making her want to kill the damn man in front of her immediately. What made Ji Qingxiu even more terrified was that she actually handed over the jade talisman. Xie Qingxiu looked at the jade talisman in Qin Mu's hand, she gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "Asshole! Give it back to me." Qin Mu raised his eyebrows slightly, smiled with interest, and teased, "This jade talisman was handed to me by you personally, have you forgotten it?" Xie Qingxiu's pretty face flushed, her fists clenched, her teeth grinding and creaking, as if she was ready to pounce on Qin Mu and fight to the death at any time. But Qin Mu was too lazy to continue to care about her. He had done what he should do, and now he was as pure as a sage. "You continue to serve our Princess Kanyu well, and you must not neglect her. You must let her feel the hospitality of our great Qin." Qin Mu turned around, gave a faint order to the maids on both sides, and then left the hall. Xie Qingxiu's pretty face became angry when she heard this. "Qin Mu, you bastard! I will never let you go." "Yes, your majesty," the maid replied respectfully. As soon as she finished speaking, the four maids surrounded Ji Qingxiu again. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 28. What are you doing? Get out! Get out of here! Don't touch me! Xie Qingxiu screamed. However, her screams could not stop the maids from moving. Soon, a new round of encouragement came from the hall. Qin Mu walked out of Yeding Palace slowly and orderly. Qin Mu didn't believe everything in the jade talisman. It wasn't that he suspected that Xie Qingxiu had lied to him, but that he suspected that Empress Kanyu had not recorded all the information on the jade talisman at all. There may even be some false or misleading information in there. With the Empress's methods, this kind of thing is not impossible. "Empress Kanyu, I hope you can give me a surprise," Qin Mu murmured, and then walked away. Kanyu Dynasty. Moon City. The simple and solemn palace stands tall and majestic. But deep inside the palace, there was another scene. With pavilions, bridges, and flowing water, as well as the fragrance of flowers and birds singing, it is like a paradise, making people feel like they are bathed in the spring breeze. Everything is in its most original posture, like a landscape painting. The imperial garden is even more colorful, with hundreds of flowers blooming. In the middle, there is a lake with rippling blue water, crystal clear to the bottom, like a mirror. A gentle breeze blows by, setting off layers of ripples. There is a pavilion in the center of the lake. In the pavilion, the furnishings are exquisite and elegant, and the carved beams and painted pillars are beautiful. There are also a variety of precious spiritual potted plants, exuding a pleasant fragrance. Dressed in red like fire, the enchanting beauty is leaning lazily on the back of the chair, her long, straight and snow-white legs slightly bent, and her body is reclining, showing a sultry posture. He was still holding a pot of strong wine in his hand and remained silent. She wears a phoenix crown on her head, her black hair falls down her shoulders, her skin is as good as snow, her facial features are exquisite, her eyebrows are black and her eyes are starry, her nose is straight, and her lips are bright and red. The whole person is like a goddess coming to earth, holy and untainted by any dust. But she has a slim figure, with delicate and convex shapes, especially her chest, which is plump, with exposed curves and hidden abyss. This is a woman who perfectly combines holiness and charm. She is too beautiful to describe in words. Especially those eyes, like a pool of autumn water, cold and quiet. She is like a proud phoenix, aloof and indifferent, and rejects others thousands of miles away. Both her figure and appearance are as flawless as if they were created by heaven. There is no flaw at all. Even if a fairy from heaven comes down to earth, it will only be like this. The empress undresses in red. She is the empress that everyone in the Kanyu dynasty respects and praises. At this moment, Xuanhuan was holding a wine glass and staring blankly at the lake in the distance. It seemed as if I saw something through this ordinary water surface. At this time, an older woman walked in slowly. "Master." Hearing the call, Xuanhuan turned around. Suddenly, the temperature of the entire pavilion seemed to drop sharply. "What's wrong?" Xuanhuan asked calmly. Although it was just 3 simple words, there was a suffocating pressure coming out of her mouth that made people breathless. "Reply to the master." The old woman hurriedly bowed and said respectfully, "Just now someone reported that the soul lamps of Wang Chongfeng and Lu Chongfeng, who were going to the great Qin dynasty, were extinguished." Hearing this, Xuanhuan's pretty face turned cold. Her eyes instantly turned cold, and wisps of terrifying murderous intent spread, sending chills all over her body. "Who did it?" "The Qin dynasty," Xuanhuan said coldly. The old woman trembled all over. Before they died, the 2 priests sent a message through the soul lamp. But the message is very strange. There is no picture or sound, as if it is isolated by some powerful barrier. We cannot judge who specifically took action. We can only infer that it should be a strong saint-level person. As for whether it was done by the Qin dynasty, further confirmation is needed. Great Qin dynasty? Ha! Xuanhuan smiled after hearing the explanation. The laughter was sweet and filled with endless chill, making the air freeze into frost. The old woman's face was pale, her forehead was sweating, and she was as silent as a cicada. She knew that her master was angry. "Where is Qingxu's soul lamp?" Xuanhuan calmed down the expression on her face and asked. "My slave has just sent someone to check. Princess Kanyu's soul lamp is still on and has not been extinguished," the old woman said respectfully. After hearing that Qingxu was safe and sound, Xuanhuan's expression gradually softened. The soul lamp represents a lifeline of a monk and is the key to life and death. As long as the soul lamp is not extinguished, it proves that the monk is still alive. But there are also some people who are not willing to leave their soul lamps, such as the soldiers like Zhenbei King who fight on the battlefield all day long. For them, no news is the best news. Sometimes not leaving the soul lamp behind is a better choice. "Master, although Princess Kanyu's soul lamp has not been extinguished, it has become even weirder." At this time, the old woman continued to speak, her expression solemn. "Huh?" Xuanhuan frowned slightly and asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" The flame of Princess Kanyu's soul lamp changed from cyan to lavender, and many strange words flashed across it. The words were extremely mysterious, like ghostly symbols, and extremely difficult to identify. The old woman frowned and said, "It turned purple?" "A ghost symbol." Xuanhuan frowned slightly when he heard this, and a sharp color flashed in his pupils. "Well, not only that, the purple flame seems to contain some power, making the entire soul lamp shrouded in a mysterious mist, which is very strange," the old woman groaned. "She has lived for thousands of years and has a wide range of experience, but she still can't see clearly." Xuanhuan lowered her head slightly and fell into deep thought. "Master, I think the great Qin dynasty should not have such courage. Perhaps there is some force targeting our Kanyu dynasty and deliberately framing it. The old woman thought about it and made a tentative suggestion. Xuanhuan slowly raised her head, her eyes cold. No matter what, those who dare to touch my Kanyu dynasty must pay the price. You immediately order someone to find out whether this matter is the work of the great Qin dynasty. Yes, the old woman responded quickly. After the voice fell, she left quickly. Xuanhuan continued to sit here, but the murderous intent surrounding her became stronger and stronger. The next moment, she held the wine glass, raised her head and drank it, letting the strong liquor slide down her snow-white neck, wet her collar, and flow into the abyss. After drinking it all, she held her chin with her hand and stared at the wine glass in her hand. Suddenly she smiled charmingly, and her cold temperament disappeared quickly like frost melting, replaced by a bewitching charm. Dakin, Qin Mu. Xuanhuan whispered, her every frown and smile showed temptation, but the cold light in her eyes made people palpitate. She slowly stood up. Her figure swayed, and she walked towards the center of the pavilion with lotus steps. Empress Kanyu Xuanhuan. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mi and Buletin Leng. Chapter 29. On the stone table of the pavilion, there is a piano that exudes a simple atmosphere. The strings are as black as ink, glowing with cold light, and the body of the instrument is engraved with complicated lines, full of mysterious charm, and is obviously not a mortal thing. Xuanhuan's fair and slender plain hands gently brushed over the strings of the piano, emitting a sweet tinkling sound that was as refreshing as the sounds of nature. Immediately afterwards, sound waves turned into sharp arrows and swept out in all directions. In an instant, the vitality of heaven and earth within a radius of 10,000 feet suddenly rioted, as if boiling, rolling, and surging. The sound of the piano contains majestic and terrifying power, which seems to be able to tear the sky apart, suppress the heaven and earth, and destroy the universe. In the blink of an eye, all the flying flowers, fallen leaves, clouds and mist within a radius of 10,000 feet were crushed and annihilated. It seemed that there was only the exciting sound of the piano and the eye-catching red figure left in the world. After a long time, the sound of the piano stopped, and the world returned to peace. Xuanhuan slowly retracted her palm and frowned slightly. She shook her head. There is still a chance. Xuanhuan sighed slightly, then stretched out her hand, and a glass of spiritual wine appeared in her white and tender palm. He raised his head and drank, and a faint blush appeared on Xuanhuan's face unconsciously. As the body swayed, Xuanhuan's beautiful eyes were slightly closed, and a thin snore gradually sounded, and she fell into a deep sleep. The Qin dynasty. Inside a restaurant called Xuanhuan. It was noon at this time, lunch had just arrived, and the waiter was greeting customers at the front door. Suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps. Immediately, a man in brocade clothes walked in with a girl in green clothes. The man in brocade clothes looks to be about 20 years old. He is handsome, and handsome. His luxurious clothes set off his nobility. The girl in green shirt is about 18 or 19 years old. She has a sweet appearance, snow-white skin, long black hair hanging down her waist, and beautiful and flawless facial features. Her eyes were as bright as stars, as if they were carved by heaven and like a fairy descending from the dust. As soon as the two appeared, they immediately attracted everyone's attention. The appearance and temperament of this man and woman are too dazzling, especially the man in brocade, who is gentle and elegant, and his every move is graceful, which makes people feel moved. Who are these two people? What a beautiful girl, just like a fairy. Yes, she is so beautiful. I have never seen such a face in my life. This young man is so handsome, he must be no ordinary person. In the restaurant, there were sounds of exclamation and conversation, and everyone looked sideways, looking at the beautiful pair. Welcome, distinguished guests. The waiter hurriedly came forward to greet me with a smile on his face. The man in robes glanced at him indifferently, then walked straight to the second floor and sat down on a seat by the window. The girl in green shirt followed closely behind him and stood beside him obediently without saying a word. May I ask what you two gentlemen want to eat? Seeing this, the waiter immediately walked up enthusiastically and asked. Bring up some of the most expensive ones in your store, the man in brocade clothes ordered calmly. Okay, sir, wait a moment, the waiter said quickly, then stepped back and started preparing the dishes. Soon, the waiter placed the dishes on the table and was about to pour some tea when he was stopped by the girl in green shirt. My Majesty, young master, I will serve you. You can go down, the girl in green shirt said calmly. Hearing these words, the waiter was stunned for a moment, then smiled coyly, bowed and said, since the girl wants to serve, I will take my leave. After saying that, he respectfully stepped back. Young master, I will serve you to enjoy your meal. The girl in green shirt turned around and bowed her head. Her tone was extremely gentle, her voice was delicate and soft, which made people feel pitiful. Yes, the man in gingy hummed lightly, which was regarded as agreement. When the girl in green shirt saw this, her pretty face burst into a happy smile, and she quickly helped him pour wine and dishes. What's your name? The man in brocade clothes said casually. My name is Ching Ching, the girl in green shirt replied softly, her eyebrows curved into crescent moons, which was particularly touching. Ching Ching, Ching Ching. The man in gingy muttered it a few times before saying, yes, the name is quite easy to pronounce. It's much easier to remember than the one named Zi last time. The man in brocade clothes was naturally Qin Mu. He was a little bored in the palace and wanted to pay a private visit incognito on a whim. So he took a palace lady out of the palace with him, and planned to go out for a walk. After all, he has been in this world for so long and has never seen the outside world. Not to mention the outside world, he has not even taken a good look at Chang'an City. Qin Mu wandered all the way and came to Ziwishun Tower. This Ziwishun Tower is a restaurant in Chang'an City. It is not large in scale and only ordinary people or weak monks come and go. These people are basically in the state of entraining qi. Of course, you can occasionally encounter some foundation building or even spiritual sea realm beings. However, the number was very small, and there were not even a few spiritual sea realm monks to be found in the entire restaurant. So Qin Mu is not worried that anyone will recognize him. Thank you for the compliment, young master. Ching Ching smiled as brightly as a flower, and was secretly happy in her heart. Her original name was naturally not Ching Ching. Just to make Qin Mu remember it, he changed his name to something easier to remember. It really works. No one in the palace knows that His Majesty never remembers names, even the names of the women he has favored. But His Majesty remembered me today, which is definitely a great honor. Ching Ching felt that she was about to join the ranks of concubines. As long as she seized this opportunity tonight. Climbing up the tree and becoming a phoenix is just around the corner. Thinking of this, her heart beat violently, her pretty face flushed, her eyes blurred, and she wished she could do it now. Ching Ching, just as King King's thoughts were wandering, a low voice suddenly sounded, scaring her whole body. Your Majesty, please speak, sir. Ching Ching came back to her senses and said in a low voice. When do you think that Zhang Luoshan will choose to rebel? Qin Mu took a sip of sake and asked with interest. Zhang Luoshan. Ching Ching was shocked when she heard this, and hurriedly said in fear and trepidation, reply to the young master, I have not paid attention to Zhang Luoshan's affairs, and I have not yet understood. No problem. Qin Mu waved his hand and continued to ask, tell me what you think. Reply to the young master, Zhang Luoshan is very ambitious. She must have planned it for a long time. Now that the people in the northern border are in favor, she will definitely not endure it for too long. Ching Ching thought for a while and answered in a low voice. Qin Mu smiled, then picked up the wine glass on the table and drank it all. Ching Ching stood aside and silently added wine for him. After a while, young master. Ching Ching bit her lip, her eyes moved, and she was about to say something but stopped. What's wrong? Qin Mu asked. Ching Ching lowered her head, her eyes seemed to contain autumn water. Then, as if she had mustered up the courage, she raised her jade wrist and reached into her sleeve, fumbled to take out a piece of white silk handkerchief, and handed it over. Sir, I want to embroider a plum blossom on it and give it to you. Ching Ching character design reference picture. Another one. The last one. Ching Ching, my Ching Ching, he, at the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 30. Hearing this, Qin Mu was slightly startled. Then he looked at the shy girl in front of him, with a faint smile on his lips. He took the plain white silk handkerchief, and a wisp of elegant fragrance filled his nose, making people feel relaxed and happy. Let's wait until night, Qin Mu said lightly, stroking the Juanpsa in his hand. Thank you, sir. Seeing this, Ching Ching was immediately overjoyed, her eyes sparkling, her face flushed with embarrassment, and she was so charming. This means she can sleep with her tonight? Ching Ching felt that today must be her lucky day. Not only was she chosen by His Majesty to go out to the palace with her, but she was also able to serve His Majesty at a close distance. The more Ching Ching thought about it, the more excited she became. She even felt that her breathing was short, her chest was high, and her heart was beating like a rabbit. Be careful, Qin Mu coughed dryly. Ching Ching came back to her senses and found that she had lost her composure. She couldn't help but blush, her head lowered, and she couldn't hide her shyness. Sir, are you hungry? This servant will bring you some food. After a while, Ching Ching calmed down and served Qin Mu some food attentively, her eyes as charming as silk and charming. Yes, Qin Mu nodded. Time flies and night falls. The lights in Ziwishan Tower are bright and noisy. The atmosphere gradually became lively. A group of people are gathering here, drinking and talking among themselves. The focus of everyone's discussion was naturally the series of foolish actions Qin Mu had made recently, as well as the affairs of the Northern Territory and the Kanyu dynasty. Although some time ago, dozens of scribes from Xuanhuan Academy lost their lives because they denounced the foolish emperor, but after that time passed, people couldn't help but start talking about it. The only lesson that people have learned from history is that they have not attracted any lessons from history. I heard that the Kanyu dynasty has had good weather in the past few years. The country is peaceful and the people are safe, the food harvest is good, the people live and work in peace and contentment, and the army has been expanded 3 times. This is really a sign of a prosperous age. Who says it's not the case? Besides, I have a wise empress. Compared with Empress Kanyu, Our Majesty is really, well, it's hard to describe in words. There is simply no move that a normal person could think of that His Majesty has done recently. A young general shook his head and looked like he was sighing. I would rather His Majesty indulge in beauty all day long and stop interfering in government affairs. Another man shook his head and said with a wry smile, such a ridiculous move is simply unbelievable. Alas, I'm afraid the great Qin dynasty will be in danger if this continues. An old man shook his head and sighed. Your Majesty ignored the dissuasion of his ministers and insisted on killing the Kanyu messenger. This is going to destroy the great Qin. Yes, if the Zhenbei army led by Zhang Luoshan defects to the Kanyu dynasty or the Qianyuan dynasty, and the 3 armies join forces, then the great Qin dynasty will be finished. Impossible. The Zhenbei army and the Kanyu dynasty are on the same level. They will never defect to the past. Someone immediately rejected the old man's words. It's impossible to tell. What if? Listening to the discussion of the people around him, Qin Mu sat on a chair nearby, leisurely and contented. Master! Ching Ching called softly, a little frightened. These people around here are really desperate. How dare you discuss His Majesty's affairs in front of His Majesty? It's true that the old man eats arsenic because he thinks he has lived too long. Ching Ching had the urge to rush forward and cover the mouths of these people. It's okay. Qin Mu raised his hand to signal her to be quiet. Then he picked up the teacup on the table and sipped the tea in the cup. His expression was leisurely and indifferent, with a sense of calmness and lightness in his trance, as if the hustle and bustle around him had nothing to do with him. Seeing that Qin Mu was not angry, Ching Ching breathed a sigh of relief. Then her eyes fell on the handsome face in front of her, and she couldn't help but be stunned. The sword-shaped eyebrows are inserted diagonally into the temples, the bridge of the handsome nose is as sharp as a knife and an axe, and the thin lips are tightly closed. Every inch of the line is as delicate as a painter's work, making people unable to take their eyes away. Especially the slight smile hanging on the corner of his mouth, with a hint of laziness and evil charm, makes people's hearts beat. Even though he is wearing ordinary brocade clothes, he still cannot hide his noble and elegant temperament. King King Fang's heart was beating wildly, a blush appeared on her cheeks, and her eyes were full of infatuation. How could there be such good-looking people in this world? As expected of your Majesty. Ching Ching sighed in appreciation. She became more and more certain in her heart that His Majesty was definitely not a foolish king, and His Majesty must have had his intentions in doing this. The level of those ordinary people is too low to understand His Majesty's realm. Thinking of this, Ching Ching admired His Majesty endlessly. She felt that being able to become His Majesty's maid was a blessing she had cultivated in 8 lifetimes. The discussion in the restaurant continued. I heard that Zhang Luoshan is about to start a rebellion, someone said with suppressed excitement. Really or not? That can still be false. A friend of my cousin's nephew's uncle's son is in the Zhenbei army. He told me all this information. Then there's something good to watch now. Tisk, 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 you are worthy of being a daughter of the Zhang family, and your courage is really extraordinary. Someone immediately gave a thumbs up and praised. Your Majesty is fatuous and incompetent. Zhang Luoshan is the future of Great Qin, someone immediately echoed. Hush, be careful what you say, someone immediately warned. For a moment, the field was completely silent, and you could hear a pin drop. Even the 2 men who were discussing the most just now shut their mouths. These discussions were indeed a bit excessive, and it was not an exaggeration to accuse them of treason. No one dared to talk loudly anymore. Qin Mu felt bored when he couldn't hear the voices talking about him. And he had been waiting here for a long time, but he didn't wait for the bully or some shameless guys to come up and provoke him. This disappointed Qin Mu, who was preparing to play the pig and eat the tiger. He originally planned to play a plot of pretending to be cool and slapping his face. This is what is written in the novel. Why is it gone here? Where are all those brainless villains? Come out quickly so that I can pretend to be cool. Qin Mu shook his head and lost interest in staying here. He wiped his mouth slowly, put down the chopsticks in his hand, stood up, and planned to leave Xuanhuan and go somewhere else. Xiaoqing stood behind Qin Mu, her face nervous, fearing that her own majesty would suddenly go berserk. At this moment, a rhythmic sound of footsteps came from the first-floor hall outside Xuanhuan. Qin Mu felt something in his heart. And looked up. He saw a handsome young man slowly walking up the stairs. He was dressed simply, holding a folding fan, with an upright figure and a rather elegant demeanor. He had a smile on his face, his eyes were like torches, deep and dark, and he exuded a warm and peaceful temperament. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes slightly, revealing a playful expression. It turned out to be him.